Route 616, your home for all things Marvel main continuity. Hello, buddy. This is RJ here, and I'm here only with Bill today. Say hello, Bill.
Hello. We tried to bring Dan, but you know boomers and technology.
We lovingly say as if Dan isn't the one with the most technological experience out of all of us. But yeah, Dan,
I'm just not letting you get all the fun of burying him.
That's, yeah. So this is episode 28 of Route 616, by the way, in case anybody's keeping count. So yeah, we were supposed to have Dan today. We were actually going to record this yesterday, and it was only going to be Bill and I, but then I was sick, and actually Bill ended up being sick too, so it worked out. So we were going to all three of us record today, and then we got in this lobby, and Dan's mic is just shit the bed, or something, so we couldn't figure out how to get him fixed and in here. So he was in here, but we couldn't hear him, which some would say is a great thing, but anyway. No complaints about any of your favorite characters today. But we are here for episode 28, and today's lineup is a little underwhelming, to be quite honest. Isn't that right, Bill?
Oh yeah, I was just going to say, that's probably because we don't focus on anyone's favorite characters today.
Yeah, that too. Well, one of my favorites is in here, but not really at the
It's
status.
not a good
suite,
outing for her. Let's just leave it there.
So, today we're going to start off with good old Tales to Astonish. No, we're not. We're starting off with Sergeant Fury and the Howling Commandos. Issue number 7, and then we're gonna go into Tales to Astonish, issue number 54. After that, with an A story from about Giant Man and a 5-page story for Wasp, retelling a story after that. Then we have Tales to Suspense, issue number 52, the A story, which sees the return of a important character momentarily, and some debuts, one of which is important. Then a C story
Both
from
of them
the
are
Watcher.
important.
Well, I suppose. Tales to Astonish number 55 sees the return of the Human Top in the A story. And then the B story is another little 5-page Wasp story. And this B story that we're going to end on today is possibly one of the worst ones that we have had so far. So, can't wait.
I don't remember what it was, so...
I don't really remember it either, but by the name,
but I don't remember it.
I'm pretty sure you pointed out how offensive that one was. So. But yeah. Anyways, let us jump into it.
Oh, it's that one. Yeah, that one was bad.
So let's jump right into Fins, and this should be a relatively quick episode today since half of it is 5-pagers. Okay. Sorry, Dan just messaged our group, so I had to check on what that was. Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos, issue number 7 is where we're starting, and this story is called The Court-Martial of Sergeant Fury. Bill and I haven't talked about this one since they read it, but hopefully it's stuck up to expectations some. This is a 22-page story. Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, of course, is one of their babies. We got George Russo's on the inks and helping on the cover with the inks too. And we got letters by Joe Rosen, and this was a March 1964 release. And off we go to the races. So, I mean, pretty cool cover. Sergeant Fury being held back by some Army Man. Pretty cool. But
yeah, they did a good job of capturing pretty much everything that's important in this story.
Yeah, there's probably, I'm hoping if I remember correctly, there's probably a decent amount I can skip in this story, because a lot of it's just kind of, it's good, but there is a lot of filler in here, just kind of to fill out the pages, but we're promising the cover that if Sergeant Fury is found guilty, it's the firing squad for him.
Can you hear me?
Oh my God.
Whoa. Holy shit, we have a Dan.
It's not, I'm on my main PC, so it's not my headset.
Maybe it's the port on your computer.
I tried all 3 ports.
Then it's just something weird.
It's something really odd. I just
anyway,
wanted to
we're
check.
in the middle of the recording right now, so...
Oh, damn. Sorry, guys.
No worries, we'll save the tech stuff for later now.
Okay. Yeah, so I just needed to find out if it was my headphones or not. It's not, obviously. Okay, well, that part's figured out. Now I got to figure out what's going on with the laptop. Bye.
Bye.
See you, Dan.
Nice cameo from Dan here. Professional podcast as always, folks. Good for nobody watches us.
I don't think he realized we were going to go straight into recording when he gave up.
Yeah, because we kind of gave up on him being here only a few minutes before we started. So, anyways, we open up. We're on a lonely airfield in occupied France with the Howling Commandos, and they are. Nick Fury's telling them to wave those torches, and they are trying to stop an aircraft here. They're successful. It comes down, and they have a doodle bug, which is a small. They stopped it from. They captured a doodle bug, which is a small Nazi mine. Blah blah blah. None of this.
The first
is really
thing that actually
part.
matters is on page 6.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say, I think a lot of the stuff at the start doesn't actually matter, so let's skip some.
It completely has nothing to do with the story. It's just they didn't have enough pages in the actual story.
We are introduced to Lieutenant Parker, who we learn is a guy named... nicknamed Skinny Parker that Nick Fury used to go to school with, and they joke, "Yo, you went to school, Sarge?" So, yeah, good stuff. So we meet Lieutenant Parker, who's in charge of this mission they have been sent on, which is they're trying to rendezvous with the underground at a farmhouse. So they get on their mission, and Nick Fury suddenly remembers something. And he's like, "No, stop! We can't move forward with this. We can't move on." And he's like, and so he starts to hold back Lieutenant Parker, and Parker's like, "Have you gone mad? I gave a direct order. You can't interrupt this." So Fury kind of punches him up a bit, and all of a sudden, an explosion rings out, and things are a bit dire when we see Sergeant Fury here wakes up in hospital after being in a coma for some days, and he's woken up by good old Happy Sam, who was like, "Oh, I knew you'd pull through, but what the hell did you do? Why, you're getting court-martialed now, and we need to know why you did it, boy. Why did you not follow direct orders?" And, well, Nick Fury can't remember. He's getting a case of the old amnesia from that head trauma, which actually makes a lot of sense in this case, but...
That half of the head trauma saga isn't the problem.
Yeah. So, we keep moving on. He's getting court-martialed. He can't remember why he didn't follow direct orders, and he's surprised that he didn't, because he's not the type that wouldn't follow a direct order, even if it was an old pal from school that he kind of used to tease a bit.
I don't know if I'd use the term pal.
Yeah,
Parker
that was
and Fury hated each other.
Being used a little loosely. They were kind of more like enemies, but still. So he goes through the motion. We see him in the courtroom. Lieutenant Parker's asked why he thinks Fury didn't follow orders, and he's like, "I honestly don't know. Like, it happened so fast, and then the explosion happened. I didn't even get an answer out of him. Blah blah blah." So nobody knows why Fury did this. Even his Howling Commandos, who we see, are very upset at the possibility that he's going to the firing range and don't know why he did that. But that explosion did happen, and they are all alive from it, from Fury's distraction. So at least something kind of came from it. So the Howling Commandos hear some other troops talking shit about Fury and about the Commandos in general. So they bust in and start beating everybody up, and they are sent to. They are punished after that as well. Of course, not getting punished as
I
badly
love
as
that
Fury.
scene afterwards where neither of the units of Commandos can be called to testify because they're both in the hospital and the guardhouse.
Yeah, they're either in the hospital or the guardhouse. They've all been punished, so it's pretty funny. There's more testimony and call for some witnesses, but as all this is going down, a few miles away, we see a squadron preparing to take to the sky. Oh, they're talking about bombing the British. It's some Nazi soldiers here. Okay. We get some backstory here as there's testimony going on to Fury and Parker's relationship, it looks like, where they were used to roughhouse each other and everything.
Yeah, most of this issue is just establishing...
It's a lot of filler.
Backstory stuff on Fury.
Yeah.
Which is great, except it all gets ignored and retconned when he moves into the modern-day Marvel, so... It's really only important to Sergeant Fury, where they'll probably never reference it again.
Probably not. So that's why it's a lot of skimming going on right now for what we're telling you guys. Nazis are trying to bomb them. They get in position. As all this is going on, we have, like, Nick Fury's getting his court-martial happening. We see the Commandos want to be let out so they can help, but they're not getting let out of the guardhouse. Essentially where this leads to is the bombing happens, and they all try to take cover and escape the courthouse as the bomb is coming down on it. Nick Fury is caught up in the blast again, and he's caught under some rubble, but he saves some men, and because of the blast, he gains his memory back. We also see the Howling Commandos on the side escape the guardhouse so they can help as well against the Nazi bombers. So, because of the blast, Nick Fury remembered what the hell happened on the field there. And he remembered that there was that they had captured a Nazi sergeant, or a corporal, I should say. They captured a Corporal Otto Schmidt early on in the mission, and he had warned Fury that weeks before he was captured, and he expected to be killed, but since his life was spared, in return, Otto had given Fury some important information and told them that they had a trap set for the underground where there was bombs set and it would kill everybody. So that's why Fury had not followed orders, because he remembered he remembered what Otto had said about the trap, and so Fury took it upon himself, and he ended up saving everybody. So after they learn all this information, Fury's court-martial is essentially null and void. He gets off scot-free, and it turns out Fury had saved everybody, and Sergeant Fury, great guy. So that's pretty much the sum up of this issue. There's a lot of backstory and filler in this one. It's a really solid issue, but yeah, it's a fun concept seeing Sergeant Fury get court-martialed. But yeah, I gave this one a solid 3 stars. That's where I landed on. Probably more of a 3.5.
I went 3 stars as well. I liked half of this. The stuff at the start with the doodlebug and then journeying to go meet Parker, you knew it was absolutely irrelevant when you were reading it, and so that completely didn't grip me. And then the actual trial was good. I liked the stuff with the 2 units of Commandos, but then they did the stupid little head trauma reverses memory loss thing. Which doesn't bother me in a superhero comic, but I found it really annoying in a more grounded war comic, because this comic is supposed to be set pretty much in the real world, with none of the like super science they brought in like World War II era comics, or actual super heroics, and so everything's pretty grounded and realistic. So to have the head trauma thing was just so much more jarring there.
Nick Fury
I would have vastly preferred it if Fury just regained his memory naturally.
Yeah, Fury is a little too invincible at times, it seems, but they all are. That's kind of a bit of the gimmick, that they always beat the odds somehow, but it's like...
Yeah, I don't mind that in the really action-y ones.
Yeah,
it didn't fit the tone of this story, and so This was actually one of the weaker Sergeant Furies for me.
Well, I mean, that's still saying something that it was one of the weaker ones and it still squeaked the 3-star rating. So, I still would say that Sergeant Fury is probably one of the most consistent / solid titles we're reading, so still a good issue in my books.
I put it firmly in second place right now.
That's what I would say too. I'd say it's Spider-Man and then this if we were at the ranked titles.
It's going to get knocked down a bit once Fantastic Four gets going, but for now I'd say it's definitely Spider-Man then this. Yeah,
we're getting close to the point where we're going to be reaching the Fantastic Four's prime, and they're going to be a solid second, if not first place for a while. So it
coincides with a weaker spell of Spider-Man, so probably first.
So it's probably going to take over first, which is pretty cool, because there's definitely a lot of weak periods with that title. But yes, anyway.
Basically everything other than the next 70 issues or so.
Exactly. But yeah, that was Sergeant Fury. I mean, it's still a good issue. I wish I enjoyed it more as well. Like, I going in, while I was reading it, it had some good fins going for it, and then it lost some momentum. At first I was hoping to give it a 4, but landed on the 3. But
I think part of the problem with it for me too was that I had high expectations about the concept of the court-martial of Fury.
It's a great concept. They lost a little bit of the execution.
Stan was not the person to deliver that.
He wasn't, but he's not the person to rightfully deliver a lot of things, really. We get down to it.
Yeah, he's more of an idea guy, like a concept guy, than a story guy, I think.
Yeah.
He's really good at coming up with the concepts of the heroes that lasted, but the individual stories he writes tend to be subpar.
Well, I suppose we shall move on now to Tales to Astonish, issue number 54 in the A story.
Speaking of subpar,
which is called No Place to Hide, and kind of wish there was a place to hide from this story, but here we go. We got Stan Lee on writing duties, of course, because what doesn't he write? Well, I get mostly the 5 pages, I suppose. Yeah, but art's by Don Heck. This Jack Kirby and Dick Ayers cover. And Artie Simic does the letters. January 1964 release. This is a 13-page story, and I'm passing this one off the bill.
All right. Now, this story features the deadly tyrant of Santo Rico, El Toro. For when actually using Puerto Rico might be a little too realistic. And also, part of America, although I doubt Stan knew that. But, or maybe they were thinking of Costa Rica, actually, I'm not sure. It's a Central American republic that's rife for overthrow by the CIA, so...
There's options.
Yes. Anyway, this story opens with Hank and Jan seeing a news report about how El Toro, the communist candidate, just won the election in the Democratic Republic of Santo Rico by the largest vote ever. So clearly he concludes that there was voter fraud and the machines were rigged and that people need to buy his pillows.
Go to mypillow.com.
And so he's immediately baffled as to why anyone would vote for a communist, because no red-blooded American would do that, even though, they're not American, but these are the details imperialists don't worry about.
Oh, my.
It might sound like I'm being very sarcastic here. I'm about 80% on what the comic's actually doing.
Yeah, this is a hell of a comic we have in our.
This is possibly the most 60s political comic out there.
It really the biggest shame of this episode not having Dan is that Dan can't experience this comic with us while we talk about it.
Yeah. I was looking forward to seeing his reactions.
Yeah.
Anyway, Jan is not paying attention to all the man stuff being covered on the news. She's focused on where they should go for vacation. But Hank is convinced that they don't have time for vacation. And so, even though this is a 13-page comic, we get a whole page of filler as they use their size-changing powers in the play fight, just over the vacation thing. And then the Giant Man fan club shows up again, because we still haven't filled enough space. And a half page later, the phone rings, giving Hank an out, so he shoos them off and gathers up Jan to head to Washington for reasons. And so 5 pages into this 13-page comic, we actually start advancing the plot some.
It is funny that we've had 18-page stories recently, then we get to this story and it's 13 pages, and we're seeing why that's a great thing, because they got filler in this. So imagine
they're filling like
story.
Crazy for this story. And a lot of stuff ends up actually happening in the story. That's the amazing thing. The second half of this comic is cluttered.
Yeah, because they don't have any pacing at this point. They don't have any idea how to pace.
Page with flirtation and fan club comedy. But anyway, Hank and Jan arrive in Washington, where they're taken to a locked building in Washington. It's not identified what building it is, but it's the CIA.
Not important, you know.
Most likely Stan and Jack didn't want to tempt fate that much by notes saying the CIA is overthrowing other governments.
Probably not, yeah.
But anyway, the CIA wants them to go to Santa Rica as tourists and see if they can unearth any evidence of a communist plot. And then report back to the OAS. And so they jet off to Santa Rica, where the communists immediately spot them and decide to arrest them because they're Americans, so they must be spies. The communists are not the stupidest people in this comic. I mean, it's tried to present like this as being evil and unreasonable, but they're totally actually spies, so the communists just figured them out.
Yeah. That's pretty hilarious, really.
Yeah. And so a bunch of the communist guards tried to grab them, and they get a hold of Jan, but she's able to talk, and they had stowed all the size-changing pellets in her purse. But she's able to toss one pellet to Hank before the communists capture her. And so Hank goes outside and takes it, and it turns him into Giant Man because it's a growing pellet. And then he smashes out of the hotel. Yes, he was outside as Giant Man and then smashing out in the next panel.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Quality control was not high on this comic. And so he tries to rescue Jan, but El Toro headbutts him in the ass. No, nice. I'm not lying about that. It knocks him flat on his face because El Toro got his name from having some sort of like headgear ramming thing like a bull. And so they take the he sends all the communist guards to try to catch Giant Man. And Giant Man tries to run away from them. But since he's stuck at giant size, he keeps getting tangled up in power lines and falling into shopping carts and stuff. And it ends up not working. They actually go for like 3 pages of him just botching, escaping horribly. And he takes off down some train tracks eventually and starts trying to get away. But oh shit, there's a train coming right when he ran into a tunnel. And a train comes out the other side of the tunnel with Giant Man now riding on top of it. When you've wasted so many pages on filler, you can't show him doing the cool stuff like dodging the train, getting on top of it in an enclosed space.
Oh, shit.
And so he rides the train back into the city, and he hides, and apparently off panel, El Toro has taken Jan back to his headquarters. And so Hank climbs up on a building and sets up a transmitter to speak to the ants. And fortunately, since, and I'm not lying again, I swear, since the antenna conveys his thoughts, he doesn't have to worry about the language barrier with the Spanish-speaking ants. So he sets the ants to go look for Jan, and turns out El Toro's got her on a boat off the coast. I have no idea how the ants managed to get to it, because they're not winged.
Because they like that part from the last 2 parts Spider-Man story.
Yes, probably. And so he water skis out on a couple of boats being towed by something they put off panel, like motorboats, and they're being towed by something he put off panel, because I guess no one could think of what would actually pull him to water ski on motorboats, so they just hoped you wouldn't think about that part. And so he goes out to the ship at sea, and he gets a hold of Jan's purse and gets the capsules. And so he shrinks down and gives her a capsule to turn her down into the Wasp. And a bunch of El Toro's guards come into the room and find that they've escaped. And so they go back to land and try to drive to tell El Toro this, but fortunately Jan and Hank hid on their uniforms. And yes, if you're thinking back, I did say El Toro was on the boat earlier. He just all of a sudden wasn't when the plot needed him to be somewhere else.
Perfect.
And so the guards go to tell El Toro that they escaped, and just then Hank takes an enlarging pill and flattens this poor communist guard by growing into Giant Man from on his shoulder. And El Toro decides to headbutt him again, but this time Hank was prepared and just spreads his legs, and El Toro goes right through his legs instead of headbutting him directly in the dick like he planned. And so Hank takes him and hangs him on a flagpole, and then reveals all these papers saying that he's a communist and bought the election vote, and that the votes were paid for by the communists. In other words, they offered social programs that the people wanted instead of pure, unadulterated capitalism. But once the people notice, they are happy and restored to a capitalist American puppet state, and Giant Man and Jan go back to America and shake hands with the CIA, who's very happy that they've reinstated a democratic government from this free and fair election that had happened. And then Giant Man is like, well, that was enough traveling. And Jan's like, I'm still trying to decide where we should go for our vacation. And with that painful moment, the story ends.
Huzzah! If that comic isn't the gift that keeps on giving. Gave this one a solid 2. It starts to enter so bad it's good territory, but like gotta be realistic on this one. It's not Impossible Man or anything.
See, this is where we see the difference on my rating philosophy and Ryan's rating philosophy. I also gave this one a 2. But I absolutely love this comic. Nothing is good about it, but everything is so perfectly, stupidly bad that it is incredibly entertaining.
It's somehow like a bad comic will also be in one of the most fun and almost one of the better Giant Man issues just because of how stupid it is.
It is unironically my favorite Giant Man story that I have read. And I've read the entire run of Giant Man up till it got canceled. And this one is my favorite one, but it is not objectively a good comic by any definition.
It really isn't.
It's just everything from the naked overthrow of a democratic government by the CIA in a comic published in the 60s where they didn't say stuff like that about the government. because this is pre things going wrong in Korea.
It is.
To the nonsensical panel layout at times, to them just blatantly forgetting plot points like El Toro being pictured on the boat talking to Jan and then immediately isn't on the boat anymore.
It's
just everything goes wrong with this comic, and I love it for it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, I guess we'll quickly move on to the 5-page story, and we'll let you go through this one, then I'll take the rest of them. So this 5-pager is called Conquest, and Artie Sibic does the letters on this, and Sol Browski does inks, Larry Lieber does the arts and co-writes. And yeah, take this one off, Bill.
The interesting thing about this one I'm going to mention right from the start is they brought Saul in to ink the framing story as well.
Oh, wow. That is interesting.
Because normally it's like the framing story is just inked by the normal Giant Man team. But this is definitely a different inker. Anyway, we open with a whole page of Jan having to babysit for one of her friend's children, and she needs to tell him a bedtime story. And clearly the Golden Age story we're retelling here was only like 3 or 4 pages long, so we needed to fill space badly. So she gets off the phone and decides to tell him the tale of a monarch named Shan. And this guy rules over a happy planet where everything is great and all the people are contented. And because they're all happy, they're no longer in abject terror and awe of him. So he decides he needs to remind them of how amazing he is and how he could kill them all on a moment's notice. So he's going to conquer a random other planet.
Nice.
So he gets his army together, and they go conquer another planet and destroy all their farmland and all their food supplies and everything. And eventually they surrender because he's destroyed all their infrastructure. And Shan goes back to his own planet, and all his people celebrate how great he is for conquering this other planet. And then they realize the problem. The people they conquered have no food and no infrastructure to grow any or produce any. So Shan has to feed them since they're now his subjects and he's responsible for that. And the only place he can get food is by taking some of the food from his own subject and shipping it to this other planet. So his own subjects get all pissy that they don't have any food. And they eventually get riled up and end up starting to hate him. And so he sits there and is sad that his people don't like him as much because now they have to share their previously abundant resources. And then the story ends with that ham-fisted morality message. And we cut back to Jan, who was hoping that Tommy had fallen asleep by now. And he instead wants to know where her wasp wings go when she's normal size. And apparently that's funny because they end the story on it.
Voila, 5 pages right there.
To be fair, this was one of the better 5-pagers.
I don't know if this just wasn't, if I just disagreed or if I just didn't really read this one because I still gave this 1 star. So
I gave it 2. I mean, it's not good. It's just better than most of them.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't really have anything to say. I don't even remember this one besides when you started, so I think we're safe to move right on to Tales of Suspense, issue number 52, the A story here, which is called The Crimson Dynamo Strikes Again. Stan Lee writing this one, co-writing this one with Don Rico. Then we have, I guess that's explains some things possibly. Then we have Don Heck on arts and inks, and George Russo's on the cover with Jack Kirby. Sam Rosen does the letters. This is a February 1964 release, a 13-page story, and we'll have Bill take this one as well, and then I'll be taking the rest of the entries for today.
All right. So to anyone reading comics in the modern day, This has exciting blurbs on the cover promising the breathtaking beauty of the mysterious Black Widow. Don't get excited. This is Natasha in name only.
Yeah, pretty much.
Anyway, we start with the Crimson Dynamo stomping through the corridors of Stark Enterprises, thinking about how great it was that Tony has coaxed him over to the good side of the Cold War, and how he needs to do everything possible to repay Tony's thrust in him. And so he's working on some sort of laser light test, and he starts trying to make it operate, but the machine's like malfunctioning, and Tony notices it and swings in and saves him. And Vanko in the Dynamo suit is like, no, I rigged the suit up so that it gives me protection against the laser beams. It should be safe now. And Tony's like, well, it should be safe, but don't risk your life until you test it. Just establishing good boss Tony here. And then we get the flashback to the Crimson Dynamo coming to America and starting to work for Tony, and they show shocking restraint and keep it to a page. Or not even a page, a panel. And we cut over to the Kremlin, where the communists are fuming about Vanko's defection. And so they send someone to go get him back and probably kill him. And so they send off the Black Widow and a man named Boris. And the Black Widow is a beautiful Russian woman, and Boris is just a big fucker. And so they go to America, and we cut back to Tony's plant, where Happy is trying to get a date with Pepper, and Pepper's shutting him down. And then these new guests come to visit Tony and probably purchase some technology for their home country of the Ukraine. And it's Natasha and Boris. And Tony is immediately smitten with Black Widow. So he tries to take her out on a date, and they're just going to leave Boris to do whatever. And so while Tony is out being infatuated with the Black Widow, Boris breaks into the factory and finds Vanko's lab. And so he shoots Vanko with some sort of weird ray gun that Vanko had designed years ago that paralyzes people when they're shot with it. And so he paralyzes him in a manner that looks suspiciously like he's wrapped up in, like, ropes or something, but apparently he's supposed to be paralyzed.
Oh.
And then he rigs up a voice recording of his lecture in Moscow that he gave a few years ago, and loads him into a sack and hauls him off. And when he's leaving, one of the guards sees him and is like, "Hey, where are you going with that?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm taking this out for Professor Vanko, and you can go check with him if you want, but he doesn't like being interrupted in the middle of a lecture." And the guard listens and can hear the voice of Vanko, for some reason speaking English, despite the fact that he was giving a lecture in Moscow.
If you ignore that, it makes sense.
Yeah, the rest of this plan is actually pretty good, and that was clearly just a stand moment. And so the guard lets him go, and he gets back on board the Russian sub that he used to get over to America, with Vanko still in tow. Or presumably Vanko's in the bag. It's never actually established. And I had forgotten what was in the bag, because now that he arrives back in the sub, he reveals what he had... Oh no, it was Vanko in the bag. Never mind, I was right. We cut to Tony out on Lover's Lane with Black Widow for a moment, and then Vanko has returned to the plant and broken into Vanko's lab again, and now he steals the Crimson Dynamo suit and starts using it to wreck Tony's lab. And we cut back to Tony on his date. Now he's at a jazz club with Black Widow, and he gets a phone call saying that there's a problem at the lab, and so he ditches Natasha and puts on his Iron Man armor and starts searching around the lab, and he finds the Crimson Dynamo and starts trying to lead him out of there so he's safe, thinking it's Vanko. And he picks up a piece of equipment to it's the laser machine to help Vanko, since he thinks that's why he's not leaving, is that he's worried the machine will get destroyed. And so when Iron Man's picked it up, Crimson Dynamo shoots him in the back and has knocked him out briefly, and takes him to the sub as well. And they lock him into the submarine, and they're all feeling smug that they've got Iron Man captured. And he just notices a light fixture and plugs his suit in. So now that he's all charged, he starts breaking through walls to see where he is. And he finds Vanko still paralyzed or wrapped up in strips of cloth, depending on whether you believe the artist's interpretation or Stan's.
It's very unfortunate, very kinky.
Yeah. And so he realizes that it wasn't Vanko in the armor, and that's why everything seemed odd. So he grabs Vanko and flies off and takes him back to New York and deposits him at Stark Enterprises. And Vanko thinks that Boris will have returned to destroy the laser ray, since he thinks that Tony is captured. And sure enough, there's Boris trying to destroy it. And so Iron Man smashes into this factory and starts fighting with Boris. And they fight for a while. And eventually the Black Widow distracts Iron Man long enough for Boris to shoot him in the back again with the machine. But this time he was ready for it. And then Vanko shows up and starts yelling at Boris to distract him to buy time for Iron Man. And naturally, Boris figures this is a great opportunity to remove this pest. So they start yelling at each other and threatening each other. And Vanko's gotten a hold of some sort of like weird little gun gadget. And Crimson Dynamo is just walking him down. Last second, Boris fires it, and the whole thing explodes. And so presumably Boris is dead. Vanko is established to be dead. And Black Widow runs off into confusion. And then we cut back to Anthony Stark hanging around with Pepper and Happy, lamenting the death of Boris. And Happy's all like, shouldn't we try to go after the Black Widow? And Tony's like, nah, she screwed up. The Russians are going to be real pissed. It's going to be worse for her if we don't catch her. And we cut to the Black Widow in a bad part of town, trying to stay undercover so that the Russians don't find her and murder her for her failure.
Yeah. But don't worry, though. We are promised in a little bubble at the end that the Black Widow will return next issue. I think we are. We're told she'll return, maybe not next issue, but she ends
I
up
think it is
returning
literally next issue that she's back.
Yeah, she is literally back next issue. I just don't remember if they say exactly that she's coming back next issue or she'll be back. So either way, though. But yeah, solid issue. Kind of going through it. Going through these comics this week, it's really makes it look more like a mediocre week. Really points it out as that, but yeah, I gave it a 3-star rating on this one.
So did I. This comic's fine. It's got some historical significance to it, but the story is a pretty basic Iron Man story. It's really just an excuse to have him fight the Crimson Dynamo again. It
gets its main points of its main positive points for the story is that this is the big deal where Crimson Dynamo dies, the first Crimson Dynamo at least. Vanko dies. He has about 4 of the 6 more appearances throughout time, but he doesn't have another appearance for like decades.
Yeah, I think they're all retellings of the original story.
Most, if not all of them, are retellings of some kind, or they go back in time to explore his character more. I don't know if he ever fully comes back, and if he does, it's like a one-off type deal. And then the other big point of this issue, of course, is the debut of Black Widow, even if it's essentially an unrecognizable version for the most part. But it is Natasha's debut. It is the Black Widow we come to know and love, so that is a huge deal as well. One of my favorite characters, if I haven't said that enough on the podcast. Black Widow is one of my favorite characters in all of Marvel. So, yeah, pretty exciting for me to see her, even if it's a shell of herself. But, yeah, fun story, fun enough, 3 stars, so, yeah. And you said 3 stars too, so let's move on. So it's kind of like, it's like, you wish it was a bigger deal for Black Widow's first appearance, but it's just not.
She was, at this point, she wasn't intended to be anything more than a femme fatale once or twice off antagonist for Tony.
Yeah, exactly.
They had no plans for her at this point.
So we might as well move right into the C story here, which is called The Failure, which sums up a lot of these 5-pagers. Larry Lieber, of course, back to co-write and do the art on this. Paul Reinman's on inks. Troy Drusa, we don't need to talk about that. We already know the cover. Sam Rosen's on letters. And this is 5 pages. And let's get right into it. So, the Watcher is here to tell us a story as the ageless observer of the ever-changing universe, and he tells us about how in 300 years war will have been abolished on Earth. There will be no hunger, poverty, or acts of violence, and all man's present-day dreams will have been fulfilled. So we see it's like we were told, it's a peaceful world, but the thing about most residents of this world is they've all kind of become so focused on business dealings and money, and they to the point where when anybody's different and has a more idealistic view of life, like somebody that wants to read poetry or just likes their art, music, or literature, we meet the main character of the story here who likes all that, and he gets made fun of all the hell from the rest of the residents of the world, besides this one woman that he meets that respects his values and believes in him, but mostly she loves him. So these two are in love, and they get made fun of, like, you should be focused on money, blah, blah, blah. So then this alien race comes, and it seems like they're going to, like, conquer the planet or something. They start hovering above everybody. They come down to the planet, they disable the cops' guns, blah, blah, blah. And then they point out the Earthling, our main character, to go with them. And he just sacrificed himself so everybody else would be safe. He's like, I'll go with you, I'll go with you. She's like, oh, let's face it together, I want to go with you too. So they're like, oh, just let him sacrifice himself, blah, blah, blah. But they both go, they both get sucked up by a ray. Back to the spaceship, and they fly off. And this is when the aliens reveal, we're actually here to select the perfect ruler. We're so far advanced that we do not elect a ruler, but by scientific screening devices, we select the perfect ruler from among countless beings in the universe. And it turns out it's you guys. It turns out it's you, and she can be your queen. So essentially, they become king and queen of this planet, and long live His Highness and Queen Valeria. That's the story. Turns out idealism is a good thing, you know? So yeah, I mean, it got a 2-star average on the site, but I just gave it 1.
I did too.
It's like, whatever. It's like,
from
it's
the
not
first
one of the
page, the moral was obvious.
Yeah.
They didn't do anything interesting to twist it up.
Yeah, it was really basic and like good enough message, but it's not one of the worst ones, but it's like whatever. Didn't need it.
Yeah, and I'm not voting on or rating on the merits of the message they're trying to give in these little morality tales. It's how good the story works.
Yeah. Well, that's that. It's a 5-pager, of course. We covered these because they're in the order. So
yeah, and really they're just in the order for the framing devices.
Yeah, because there's Wasp and there's a Watcher.
We could ignore the contents of the actual story, but that would make for a very unsatisfying summary.
Yeah. So let's move on to our last comic of the day. We have 2 different stories left, but 1 comic. We have Tales to Astonish issue number 55, and the A story is called On the Trail to Human Top. That's right, everybody's favorite. Everybody, especially on this podcast, favorite. The Human Top is back.
He must be one of Stan's favorites because he was just in this book like 2 issues ago.
The bad part is I don't remember a lot of this issue besides the fact that Human Top is not as good in this appearance as he was in the other ones. And I was the only one that liked him in the other ones.
I mean, I agree with you. He wasn't as good this time, but he wasn't good before.
So we open up this issue. It's an alright cover besides like the Human Tops are being kind of meh. But we open up at
Did you mention the bad news about this one?
Besides the Human Tops back?
We're back to 18 pages.
Oh, fuck me. I don't even think I ran through the goddamn... Stan Lee's writing, Dick Ayers on arts, Saul Brodsky and Jack Kirby on cover, Artie Simmons on letters. February 1964, releasing this, Bill had to be the jerk and point out it's an 18-page story. Fuck.
I was so crushed when I saw that. I read the El Toro one, and I'm like, oh, excellent. They're back to 13 pages for Giant Man. And then I hit this one, which I knew was worse. And no, it's 18 pages.
El Toro was just special. Oh, fuck. I guess, I mean, it was, but for all the wrong reasons. But we open up the story at Giant Man's lab in New York as Wasp and Giant Man show the local fan club a newsreel film of one of the most spectacular cases, which, of course, is the case of the Human Tops, who was the most elusive foe they ever fought. And he was essentially uncatchable. So we get a rundown. They're given a rundown through the story of the fight of talking to the fan club of what happened last time. Essentially,
can I just point something out here?
Oh, go ahead.
I'm convinced that the reason 3 stories in a row now have featured a Giant Man fan club is because Stan was trying desperately to convince people that people were actually fans of Giant Man.
Oh, definitely. That's definitely what's going on here. He's trying to do his subconscious things where it's like, they have a fan club. Like, obviously this book has fans. Please keep reading. That's exactly what's going on. Notice how the more successful heroes don't have a fan club showing up all the time.
Yeah, it's the worst hero in the order that keeps getting the fan club.
That's definitely on purpose. Stan isn't a complete moron. He has some...
He's come up with all these characters. Like I said, he's good at creating the initial ideas. He's just not good at monthly stories.
Yeah, he also has... It's also kind of the Jack Kirby effect where you've created the characters now, so maybe let some other people try to write them because you have too much on your plate, buddy. And you're just reusing
there was only
the same...
like 6 people working for the company at this point, so...
I mean, yes, he kind of had to, but at the same time, it's like, shit, you can't have a quality... you can't do quality all the time.
Yeah, I crap on Stan a lot on this podcast. At least half of that is just in jest, because it would be... the same complaints would exist for anyone trying to write this volume of comics.
Yeah, it's a lot of it's just jokes because it would be really unfair to actually legitimately judge Stan on a lot of this because it's just how it was back then for a lot of these issues.
Yeah, and I mean compared to the 50s, these are amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Just be happy we're not covering doing the full read through.
I am not trying to convince you that the stories of the 14 different kids in the Western Order are actually different stories and not just the same story where they've palette swapped the cowboy.
So, yes, Giant Man continues to run his fan club because he has fans, through his case with the Human Top. So... one of the fans speaks up. He's like, "Oh, I bet if you had to catch him now, it'd be lots easier for you." He's like, "I appreciate the confidence, little friend, and I wish I shared it, but I'm not so sure." And pretty much on cue, there we go over to the we go over to the cell that the human top is locked in, and we see that he quite simply has learned a new trick that if he spins fast enough, he'll go invisible to the human eye, which he uses on a guard that gets their attention drawn to the cell. So he starts spinning. He seems invisible to the eye, so the guard runs away, and then human top just quite simply spins out of his cell, and this is where he escapes from prison. What? Pretty easy if you ask me, but so fucking hell. Oh, I forgot that's how he escaped. That's so good. So is this, did they get the... Oh, yep, right away he goes and commits a crime, and then on the newscast that Hank and Jan happen to turn on the TV in the afternoon here, they catch the report that the human top has escaped and is back to committing crimes. So immediately Jan shrinks down to being a wasp, Hank turns into Giant Man, they're ready for action. Hank uses his incredible pole hanging off the building to vault himself down into the street. I love that. And Wasp,
I was waiting for him to break his ankle again, since they had been on that trend so much in the last month.
Oh, that would have been... I wish. That would have made the story so much better if he broke his ankle. So, Hank is like, wow, there's a crowd here. I'm Giant Man. I'm popular. Well, supposedly. Maybe I should shrink down to be an Ant-Man so we can go... so we can go explore the scene of the crime.
The best thing is the crowd wasn't there to see him. They were all fleeing the human top's crime spree.
Yeah.
Hank's just an arrogant cunt.
Hank just thinks everybody loves him. It turns out he has
probably pays that fan club to come around.
He just has 10 kids who happen to like him because he has a good gimmick, and that's about it.
He bribes them with food and Jan's money.
Yeah. So they get to the bank, and they're essentially like, "Oh, you missed the human top. He's been out of here, well gone." We see the human top, in fact, and how he has escaped. And Hank's like, "I won't rest until this guy's beaten. We can't have him going around again." We see the human top is essentially stalking our heroes. He's like, "If it's not my lucky day,
we call that
look who's
foreshadowing."
It's
I
like
don't know
it's
if you
Giant
know
Man
that storyline yet, Ryan, but he literally starts stalking Jan.
That doesn't surprise me.
He gets a job as her chauffeur and everything.
He literally keeps following them as they make their way back, as unaware of them being followed. They make their way back to the lab/workshop, and Hank's like, well, and Hank starts to go to work on something. I believe he's trying to come up with some kind of device or something where he can track the human top easier. Human top's been following him, of course, so he makes his way into the lab, and he right away steals Hank's belt, which contains, of course, his shrinking and enlarging pills that he loves to use. So, our first battle with the return of the human top begins, and well, they're pretty unsuccessful. The human top almost gets his hands on Jan again after flinging Hank away and locking him in a room, and but she shrinks down to get away. She's almost stepped on momentarily. While he starts to walk away, she's questioning what he's doing before he quickly turns around with a cup in hand and traps Wasp in a cup like she is indeed a wasp. Pretty clever. Hank's stuck in the room still, locked in. And he uses his antenna to contact his aunts to help him get one of his pills out of his the pocket of his belt that was taken off, so he can grow down from regular size to be an Ant-Man again. And he escapes from underneath the door. and he goes ahead and uses formula that he creates or uses on the spot to shrink his belt down in size so he can fit around him again, so he can use it to full effect. And then he gets on this little craft he created so the ants could carry him along like the reindeer almost, and go travel to try to find a human top. Which he is very successful in. I don't know if he actually had a plan for how to catch up to human top, but we're not worried about that. But he finds them. He's like, this is it, and he grows in size to become Giant Man again. And human top's like, how did you find me? Oh, by the way, when they were in the lab, human top took one of Hank's pills and became enlarged, and that's why he was able to just throw Hank around. Forgot to mention that before. And and turns out, even though he's big in size and you'd think it'd slow him down, he still kept the equivalent of his speed or whatever, so he's like even more of a menace supposedly. Although, is he rarely when he gets taken down in one issue this time instead of two? So
Yeah,
just
they
think on
really
that.
have to figure out how the enlarging works, because literally the last issue, they had like a 3-page comedy sequence of Hank stumbling around that Central American city because he had to be in giant size, and his agility was completely thrown off because of it.
Giant Man,
And then the human top takes the pills the next issue and maintains all of the agility he had.
The Giant Man evolution and concept was kind of ineffable, but at the same time, it's like, fuck, Ant-Man was so much more fun of a concept. Just the shrinking concept worked so much better and had so much more thought put into it, seemingly.
I blame
it's like,
Avengers. I think it was
like,
literally
fuck.
that they didn't think Ant-Man could keep up with the other Avengers, so they gave him Giant Man so they'd seem more powerful on that team.
Yeah, it's kind of a shame because it was more consistently fun to read as Ant-Man, I'd say.
Yeah, and they had solid rules of how it worked as Ant-Man. With Giant Man, they're very obviously just making it up on the fly.
Even if a lot of the stories were still shitty, it's like, I don't know, the Giant Man concept just isn't clicking. It's not clicking.
Yeah. And it's totally, I think, that they don't know what they're doing with him.
So, the Giants battle. Hank shrinks down to human size to avoid some strikes. We see Foss. I can't even speak. We see Foss. What's Foss? We see Wasp not far away, gathering some troops from some ants as they chew on some.
Those aren't ants, my friend.
They're not. Look at that. They chew. They're termites or whatever or something. They're chewing on stuff underneath the ground there around where they're fighting for a plan that Hank came up with Jan. And the battle continues, blah, blah, blah. But essentially, the battle continues, and then suddenly the roof collapses on the human top. Because that was their plan for the for the fucking termites to chew through the floor underneath where they're fighting, so the human top would fall through eventually. And Hank was using his shrinking and enlarging to tire the human top out some, as well as him falling through the roof, tired him out enough that he's just back to regular speed, and they are able to capture him and get him back in prison. So, pretty uninspired, really, but we got to the end of that one. They took care of him in one issue instead of two this time.
I'm going to start with the positives. This had about the best pacing of any Giant Man story.
Fair.
That's the end of the positives.
I was about to say, is that it?
That's the only positive, that they figured out the pacing for an 18-page story.
That is fair.
There wasn't much filler.
That doesn't mean it was good, but...
No, this story's awful. But on a technical writing level, they're figuring out how to make the comics work.
Thank God, but yeah. If only it was a better story. I gave this one 2 stars.
So did I.
Last time I enjoyed Human Top more. This time, I kind of gave up on him a little bit.
I have never enjoyed Human Top.
I thought the first 2 were half decent, and more for the Human Top being an alright villain, and not like the Giant Man still sucks there, but Human Top was kind of fun in those first two. This one, not so much. It was a lot of BS. The giant concept is getting in the way of good storytelling, and yeah, I don't know, just not that good. Not that good. I think on that note, we should get to our so-called main event and get this last 5 page out of the way. So hopefully next week can hold some less mediocre stories for us to cover. So let us cover the B story of this one, called The Gypsy's Secret. This is a 5-page story, of course. George Roussos does the inking on the story of this one. Art is done by Larry Lieber and co-written by Larry Lieber as well. Of course, with his brother Stan. And off we go. Do I remember the story? Not really, so join in the fun as I figure out what's going on here. We have...
You want me to take it? Because I do remember this one.
You do? Oh, you know what? Sure, go ahead then. It's going to be easier if you cover it.
Alright, so I will cover the story that has all the joy you expect from a story with a slur in the title. Anyway, in this one, our framing device is Hank doing experiments and Jan being bored and so trying to tell him a story. And she starts telling the story about this old Roma guy who has figured out the secret of alchemy. And he takes a block of lead, dips it into a bunch of chemicals, and comes out with a block of solid gold. And so he's slowly creating just enough gold to live with, and paying people off when he needs stuff with a bit of the gold. And eventually he comes near this castle, and there's this rich aristocrat who lives there who doesn't like the Roma, and so he threatens to sick his hounds on him if he doesn't get off his property in 10 minutes, because he's a thief just like all his kind. And the Roma guy's like, I haven't stolen anything. I just create the gold out of lead. And the aristocrat's like, you need to take me home, or take me to your, you need to show me how you turn lead into gold. And he's like, all right, I will take you home and show you how I do it.
I just remember this whole story when you started saying that.
And so he takes the guy to his wagon and locks the guy in a little cage, and then the wagon takes off because there is a spaceship in it, and it flies off into space, and the Roma pulls his mask off and reveals that he's not actually a Roma, he's actually an alien. And he's taking him to his home planet, where he will show him the alchemist formula as promised, although it won't do him much good, because on his world, gold is the commonest and therefore the most worthless of all metals. And then we cut back to our framing device, where Jan asks Hank what he thought of that, and Hank's like, oh, I wasn't actually listening to that. Instead, I'm going to try to discover a formula for turning lead into gold. And then he just goes back to doing science. The end.
I hate this guy. Oh my god. Jan deserves so much better. Oh, fuck. That was awful. That was bad.
Fucking Enchantress deserves better than Hank Pym.
Oh my god. That was a solid 1 star. And
yeah,
I'd go
1 star.
I'd go 0 if I could.
This would have been a 1 star even without the racism.
Oh, this was so racist. This was so bad. As soon as you started saying the lead and the gold stuff, it all came back to me. Was in the story. Oh, it's so bad. Oh my god, and he's an alien. Oh my god, it's so bad. I can't believe we're ending on that now. Oh well, it is what it is.
I mean, would you rather start the next episode on it?
I wouldn't. It's best this way. Believe it or not, guys. And this is a relatively shorter episode of this podcast, so like we said, but yeah, let's get to closing it out. But before we do, let us promote the next episode, tell you guys what's coming up in it. I just want to make sure, there we go.
We're opening with something that we previously would have thought was impossible.
So, Okay, I need to actually pull my crap up here. Sorry, guys. I was stuck on the...
Since Ryan isn't prepared, I'll say it's an actual good episode or issue of Strange Tales.
Yeah, I mean, I knew what it was. I just wanted to pull up the story to be able to see the story descriptions too. And it is indeed a good Strange Tales story. I forgot it's that one next. That's one of the better issues, probably. So we have Strange Tales number 120 to open up on. And for the A story, we have the Human Torch meeting Iceman of the X-Men. So that's going to be really good, believe it or not. Those two together always tends to lead to some fun. We have the B story of Strange Tales number 120 with a Doctor Strange story, and he visits the House of Shadows. Which is a haunted house, possibly? Question mark. Let's find it.
I think I remember what this one is.
I
think I liked it.
It's fun. Amazing Spider-Man number 13 comes after that, where we meet the Menace of Mysterio. So that's pretty cool. We then go into the return of the Black Widow already with issue 53 of Tales of Suspense. The Black Widow strikes again. And a C story with a shitty 5-page Watcher story that I don't remember.
No, this is the good Watcher story.
It must be because I gave it 2 stars.
This is the origin of the Watcher.
Oh, yeah, okay. That's right. You like this one more than I do. But yeah, it's a pretty good one for the shitty 5-pagers. Tales to Astonish is going to end us off with issue 56, as we have an A story about... Wow. Yeah, it's that one. We have an A story about a guy named the Magician, and then a 5-page B story where we're told to beware the Bog Beast. So,
yeah,
wow,
we're ending on some real quality next week.
That's a strong issue to end on. I did that purposely, though, because the episode after that, which is the last episode I've planned out as of now, is a very strong episode. So I did that on purpose. So.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a good number of issues to go through.
Yeah.
We
7
can't
entries.
really aim for quality with the way this is going to start being spaced out.
7 entries, 2 of them 5 pages, 1 of them's 8 pages, whatever. It's pretty good. Pretty good.
Yeah, we don't want to throw on a fucking 22-pager at the end there.
Exactly. So, it's... next week's episode should be a little less mediocre than this one. We have a good Strange Tales issue and
there's really
a good
only
Spider-Man.
one bad main issue story next.
Yeah, because the Iron Man story is also passable. It's not as good as this week's, which is not saying much, but it's still decent enough. But yeah, it should be fun.
It's a fine Iron Man. The Strange Tales is actually good. The Spider-Man is good despite the fact that I hate Mysterio.
I like Mysterio, so...
I don't like the messing with the hero's head style of storytelling in comics.
Fair enough. It gets a little much at times, but most part I like Mysterio.
It can be good, but most authors aren't good enough to do it well.
Hopefully Dan figures out what's going on with his issues so we can have him back next week, and hopefully we might have an update on when our bonus episode's coming out this month, although I don't know about that.
We should have Dan back next week. We got him in briefly when he figured out how to make his sound work.
Yeah. So hopefully he'll be back, and maybe we'll have an update on the
He just might have
bonus
to
episode.
use a suboptimal computer.
And if you don't know about the bonus episode, we're celebrating Christmas and the holidays with a Merry Sharkmas, as we're covering, as normal people would. We're totally normal people would cover shark movies for Christmas. We have 4 picked out. We might add 2 more. I might as well. We'll give you a little taste of what we're going to be covering. We have a couple Christmassy / winter related movies we're going to do, as we have Santa Jaws, and Ice Sharks. I've not ever watched a shark movie, so this is them pulling me into the world of shark movies, because they're all of them are obsessed with them, and by all of them I mean we're also going to have a guest star in Dan's daughter when we do this, or we're supposed to. We're also going to be covering some regular ones, because there's not enough Christmas ones we can think of to cover at the moment. We're going to do Sky Sharks and Zombie Sharks. So that's 4. We might add a couple more on. Not sure yet, but we're at least doing 4 shark movies. So Merry Sharkmas when that comes. What were you gonna say, Bill? You look like you were gonna.
I was going to say, I think whether we add more or not is entirely contingent on how much you like them, and therefore how much fun we can have from mocking you with them.
Yeah, we also gotta. I also gotta like track copies of all these down. So yeah, so gonna.
For one, am rooting for Ryan to absolutely hate them.
I'm hoping I hate them too because they all love them. So it's more fun for the podcast if I hate these movies. So
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like, if you like it too, we get a mediocre episode of us just fawning over truly, truly horrible cinema.
Yes.
Because none of us are under any illusion that these are good movies.
They just involve sharks, so...
And are comically terrible.
Yeah, so it could be a very interesting episode, so stay tuned for that. And the good part is the hope that I do hate them, and hopefully I do, is that they might get to torture me with more episodes in the future, with more sharks, so...
It's not even necessarily to torturing you with more episodes in the future, so much as just making fun of you for not liking shark movies.
That too. It's a best of both worlds situation.
Because eventually Rob Zombie is going to lose its comedic appeal.
Hopefully. Anyways, guys, I think on that note, we'll start the sign off here. If you're watching this on YouTube, which is the best way probably to watch this, because you get to see our faces. Woo! But yeah, like, subscribe, comment, even share if you'd like to. Rob Zombie
directs a mediocre horror remake of this podcast.
Fuck's sakes. We're also available on. How do you always find a way? Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and we are also available on Spotify, which if you're listening to this on Spotify, give a click on the connected poll to tell us what your favorite story we covered today was. And of course, tell us what was the El Toro story. Anyway, guys, we will see you all in the next episode. Hopefully we have Dan back, and hopefully an update on that shark episode. We will see you all later, and peace out.
Have a good one, everyone.